All right, I might get started with doing the housekeeping and welcome everyone to the Community Mental Health Drug and Alcohol Research Network's Example of Excellence webinar, showcasing the work of the Community Restorative Centre. My name is Katie Sam and I'm the project coordinator for ComDAN, and I'll begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands of which we're all meeting on today. I'm working on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any First Nations people who are attending today. And I'd also like to acknowledge and recognise those with lived experience of mental health challenges and substance use, and their important contributions in informing policy and service reform, particularly through research and evaluation. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everyone's able to take something away from the session and being aware of the great work of the Community Restorative Centre are doing, both in their frontline work as well as their research and advocacy efforts. I thought it was a great opportunity to have them share their insights as a sort of a case example for the ComDAN network, that quality research can be achieved in the NGO and community managed sectors. So before I hand over the reins to the wonderful Lucy Phelan from Community Restorative Centre, I encourage you all to please use the chat and the Q&A functions throughout the session. Lucy's happy to answer any of your burning questions, so please don't be shy. We are due to finish at 3 o'clock today, and the webinar is being recorded for you to access later if you're unable to stay for the whole event. And I believe that is all the housekeeping done. I want Lucy to be able to introduce the Community Restorative Centre properly. So I'm delighted to introduce our fantastic presenter for today, Lucy Phelan. Lucy is the manager of the Advocacy, Research and Policy Unit at CRC. Thanks so much, Lucy, for presenting today.
Thanks so much, Katie. I really appreciate that very generous introduction. And thanks to everyone for coming along today. So I will be doing a bit of an introduction about CRC in a moment, but to start with, I wanted to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we all work and live. For us at CRC, that's the Gadigal, Wangal and Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation. We recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community, and pay respects to elders past and present. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and we also want to acknowledge the tireless advocacy and work undertaken by First Nations people in advocating for systemic change in the criminal justice system. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So again, thanks to Katie for having us today. I really appreciate being asked to do this webinar. My name is Lucy Phelan. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the manager of the ARPU at CRC. And I'm going to be talking to you about CRC's work in advocacy and research. And my lovely colleagues, Vendula and Sophie, helped me pull together this presentation. And I would also like to thank the ARPU founders, CRC staff and clients, and ex-ARPU team members, Rihanna Tatana and Joseph Clark. So to give you a bit of background, and Katie mentioned this at the beginning, Katie wrote to me maybe a month or so ago asking if we would like to do a webinar on our work after CRC won the Excellence in Research and Evaluation Award at the 2023 AOD Awards for the New South Wales non-government sector. This award was largely won on the back of CRC's 2020 evaluation titled They're there to support you and help you. They're not there to judge you, breaking the cycle of incarceration, drug use and release, evaluation of the Community Restoratives AOD and reintegration programs. The evaluation was instigated by Dr. Mindy Satiri, who was then CRC's Program Director of Advocacy and Research, and was funded by New South Wales Health's Alcohol and Other Drugs Early Intervention Fund. CRC partnered with Associate Professor Ruth McCausland and Dr. Rebecca Reeve at UNSW to draw on their evaluation expertise. And I came on board a few days a week to manage the project and conduct the qualitative research. And CRC ex-CRC caseworker Terry Burns, who also had a sociology background and a particular interest in research, came on board as an Aboriginal investigator. And I will be telling you more about this evaluation a little bit later. So there's some photos of us collecting the award. And excellence we do aspire to here in our ARPU unit, but it is also a flexible and iterative process too. So we're still very much in the process of building the unit and the work we do. So today I thought I'd talk you through how the ARPU works in 3 key sections. So about ARPU and, or about CRC to start with, and how the ARPU fits into CRC's work, why CRC wanted to do its own research and what the benefits are, and what this looks like in practice. So I'm going to try and bring this back to CRC's work throughout this webinar, but perhaps as we go along, you could all think about how these approaches or ideas may or may not apply to your community organisation. And again, I'm open to comments or questions in the chat as we go along, or otherwise at the end, there is an opportunity for some questions. So, all right, so for the very first section, section 1. So background to CRC and ARPU. So who is CRC? What are our values? What do we do? How ARPU fits into the organisation, and a bit about the history of ARPU. So CRC is the lead NGO providing specialist support to people impacted by the criminal justice system and their families, with a particular emphasis on the provision of post-release and reintegration programs for people with multiple and complex needs. All of our programs aim to reduce recidivism, break entrenched cycles of criminal justice system involvement, and build pathways out of the criminal justice system. Sorry. So CRC's work is guided by 8 key values, which are listed up on the screen here. They're very much sociologically or socially oriented, and these values have helped to guide the work of the Advocacy Research and Policy Unit. So the first one is social disadvantage is an underlying cause of incarceration, and people should not be criminalised or discriminated against as a consequence of their disadvantage. The second value is Australia's history of colonisation and oppression is reflected in and is a cause of the relationship between Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the criminal justice system. The application of the law reflects broader inequalities and is not always just. Imprisonment is overused and is often a failed response to crime, and often causes more harm than good and leads to more imprisonment. For as long as there are prisons, they should be fair, just and humane environments that respect human rights. There is a need for community-based alternatives to the criminal justice system. People who have been released from prison should not experience perpetual punishment, and the families and kin of people who are incarcerated are often serving an invisible sentence and require acknowledgement and support. So we have a number of programs here at CRC. They're funded from a variety of different sources. So on the left of the screen lists our transitional post-release programs, which all operate using the same model of support, which includes through care. So ideally working with people while they're still in prison, and is longer term, approximately 12 months, is client-led and relational, and is also practical and holistic, and operates using a flexible outreach approach. These programs operate primarily in the Greater Sydney metro area, with the exception of the Transitional Indigenous Service, which is in New South Wales' far west, so Broken Hill and Wilcannia. On the right of the screen, we list a number of our other programs and activities, which include families casework. We have our telephone information and referral service, open to anyone. We have music and arts programs inside select New South Wales prisons and also in the community. That's called Songbirds. We have our jailbreak radio program, our paper chained journal, which is a writing journal for people in prison, a court support program, which supports people in court. And then we also have the ARPU. So you can find out more about all of our wonderful programs on the CRC website and also in our annual report. And up on the screen here, we have a diagram of the current organisational structure, which helps to illustrate the breadth of work that we do. So moving along, getting to ARPU. So ARPU is one of the 5 pillars of CRC's organisational structure. So you can see here that we're working collaboratively with the leadership and strategic direction team, service delivery and administration to ensure that the organisation is constantly striving to learn, reflect and adapt. And what do we hope to achieve? So in a nutshell, ARPU hopes to achieve better outcomes for people impacted by the criminal justice system on both a service delivery and systemic level through reviewing, conducting and translating research and evidence to guide CRC's work. So I wanted to give you a little bit of history about the ARPU, some context here. So ARPU was formed in 2014 by our CEO, Alison Churchill, and then Program Director, Dr. Mindy Satiri, who is now the Executive Director of the Justice Reform Initiative. The CRC board, particularly the work of Ruth McCausland, played a strong role in advocating for the need to establish the Advocacy and Research Unit at CRC. And the CRC board established a subcommittee, which was focused on research and advocacy, which gives us guidance to this day. So there's some lovely photos of the 3 of them. So to give a little bit more context, when ARPU first started in 2014, Mindy, who was the program director, also had a number of other roles in the organisation. So research and advocacy was just a small part of her role, and she has grown, she grew the unit over a number of years, which was really driven by her dedication and passion for change. So we were formally funded in September 2021 for 3 years by the Paul Ramsay Foundation, PRF, which has been absolutely essential in providing the opportunity to grow the unit into the future. And where we are now, so we're extremely lucky to have the PRF funding, which has allowed us to have some dedicated staff in the ARPU team. We've got 3 team members. We're all part-time. We've got myself as the manager, Dr. Vendula Belikova, who is a senior research officer, and Sophie Russell, who is a senior research officer. And we also aim to have a dedicated First Nations researcher in the team. And we've been lucky to have had 2 wonderful staff members, Rihanna Tatana and Joseph Clark, who've both moved on to other exciting opportunities. So getting to a bit more of the kind of meat of today's discussion, we're wanting to investigate why a community organisation like CRC would want to do their own research and the benefits that we see of that. So if everyone wants to just kind of think to themselves, or you could type in the chat if you wanted to, about what you might see as the reasons a community organisation would want to do their own research. And if anyone, feel free to type that into the chat, or we can discuss this at the end of the webinar as well. So just in thinking about this question to myself in preparing this presentation, there are many different reasons that a community organisation might want to do their own research. And in talking to my team and staff at CRC, these are just some of the reasons that we came up with. So to set our own agenda and answer the questions that we want to be asked, to better understand the work that we are doing, the needs of our clients and how to improve it or better meet the needs, to monitor and measure the impact of our work on our clients, to gather evidence to support decision-making about programs and organisational priorities, including for grant applications and funding, to support advocacy efforts and know where to agitate for change, to build partnerships with experts and other stakeholders and such as academic institutions, to share our knowledge as service providers with other service providers, government, academics and the community, and to ensure there's research literacy in the organisation, which helps us to manage research requests and translate research outcomes. So in thinking about all the different reasons that CRC has an ARPU, there was one thing that I kept coming back to, which I think is at the heart of the ARPU's intentions. So I think an ARPU is best placed, having an advocacy, research and policy unit within the community organisation is best placed to understand the organisation's culture and values and address these values within research flexibly, sensitively, and with nuance. So on that point, community-based research has the advantage of not being bound by the rigidity of universities or government and can therefore be more responsive to the organisational needs. Oh, sorry, I just saw that there actually are some comments in the chat. Maybe I'll just come to these at the end. Sorry about that. I haven't been looking. Okay, I will move on to the next slide. So in true researcher fashion, in preparing for this webinar, we asked CRC staff what they saw the benefit of having an ARPU was. And yes, that's probably a leading question, but they came up with some great answers. And to summarise, the key benefits included to support the advocacy efforts of staff and the organisation more broadly, to provide evidence for funding and grant applications, to help with data collection and reporting, and to help prepare and support staff with presentations. And interestingly, a few of the comments indicated that they were attracted to working for CRC because we had an ARPU. So I'm just going to go through each of these and just read out one of the quotes from staff members. So I'll read out this quote from Ash, who's the team leader at the Miranda Project. The research and advocacy work is essential. It's part of the reason I stay working at CRC. Knowing we do work both on the ground individually with clients and then on the larger systemic level means I am working for an organisation that is creating change from the bottom up and the top down. That's such a lovely quote. Thanks, Ash. The next quotes are around the way that our work provides evidence. So a quote here from Cassie, who's our Strategic Development Manager, encapsulates this well. So CRC's evaluations are invaluable in demonstrating the efficacy of our service delivery model, whether applying for government grants or writing a proposal, seeking funding from a philanthropic organisation. I use these evaluations as evidence that our programs are effective, scalable, and able to achieve positive outcomes for clients. I believe that the inclusion of evaluations in grant applications and tenders significantly increases the chances of successful outcomes. So another part of our work is helping with data and reporting. And there's a lovely quote here from Regina, the manager of our RHSP program. APU has provided ongoing support in the rollout of the RHSP, the Reintegration Housing Support Program. Their support has been invaluable in helping navigate the evaluation, data collection, and reporting elements of the program. We love their passion and interest in understanding and advocating for our clients and the work we do. Presentation. So finally, let's hear from Dave, who's the manager of the AOD team. Quite a long quote from him. So he says, APU's support to our team has been invaluable. They've encouraged and empowered staff to deliver presentations and participate in live panel discussions. Without APU, we would need to decline invitations to present. As the manager of a busy frontline service, I do not have the time or capacity to develop and prepare and support staff with these opportunities. For example, APU played a vital role in preparing slides and a presentation for another member of my team with lived experience who had been asked to present at a NADA event for International Women's Day. APU came to the rescue by preparing the presentation in consultation with the staff member. They provided an incredible foundation of statistics and evidence to support the staff members' powerful messages about the specific challenges faced by women leaving incarceration. So thank you, CRC staff. Really appreciate those lovely comments. So, which leads us to the next section very nicely. And indicates how our work is put into practice. So this next section, so I'm just gonna check the time. Okay, all right. Yeah, I think we're going okay. It's probably the chunkier section, but it's basically unpacking how we put our work into practice at CRC. So what this kind of looks like in thinking kind of, well, what are we doing in the APU and what does this mean kind of on a really practical level? So the main activities that we're undertaking in the APU is around kind of being embedded in the organisation, understanding the needs and the culture of the organisation, and talking to staff about their work and advocacy concerns on a day-to-day level. So it's really invaluable actually being situated in our Canterbury office and being able to have that immersion within the organisation to really understand the needs of the organisation. So secondly, and this is, I'll talk through this in a little bit more detail in a moment. So defining research priorities and processes, which have helped to guide our work. Thirdly, so meeting with managers and finding out about their specific programs, research needs. Fourth, so scoping, reviewing and analysing information, which is already being collected by the organisation. So kind of doing a bit of an audit, like what are we collecting? Why are we collecting it? Do we need to collect it? Can we collect it better? What are we going to do with the information? And that leads us to the next one. So identifying gaps in data collection and knowledge. And lastly, we meet with our advocacy research subcommittee on a quarterly basis to discuss our advocacy and research priorities. And they've been invaluable in helping to provide that academic and expert knowledge into our research unit. So if you're thinking that creating a research unit in your organisation is a mammoth task, I'd agree that there is potentially a lot of work to do, and I have found, and we found that defining our research priorities and processes was an important step in where to guide our efforts and work out where we can put our skills to use within the organisation. And that was particularly important, which for the reason that it guides both our internal research and operations, but also external research requests and collaboration. So we ensure that all the research that we're kind of touching or supporting or being involved with is aligned with our research priorities. So we have 6 key research priorities, and these have been developed and evolved over time. And each of these priorities has a fair amount of additional detail to them, but I'm just presenting the kind of headline overarching priorities to you today. And we've recently been seeking some feedback on these priorities from our research subcommittee, which has proven to be very useful. So I'll just kind of talk you through these very quickly. So the first is to explore the effectiveness of and good practice in community-based through care and post-release programs, which support people to build meaningful pathways out of the justice system. So that's essentially research around the work that we're doing and potentially what other service providers might be doing. Secondly, to understand the needs and experiences of people with lived experience of the criminal justice system, including people who are more broadly impacted, such as families and communities as well. And that also includes our staff in terms of understanding their work and their needs within the organisation. So the third priority is to explore the drivers of and the means of reducing the overrepresentation of marginalised and disadvantaged people who are disproportionately impacted by the criminal justice system. So that is particularly First Nations people. Fourth, we want to ensure that people with lived experience of incarceration are given a voice in research that relates to the criminal justice system and related social disadvantage. Fifth is to investigate the costs and cost effectiveness of community programs and alternatives to incarceration. And lastly, to explore the means of reducing the prison population. So there are 6 kind of guiding research priorities at this point. And as I said, they're kind of evolving, and we do kind of shape these as our work progresses. And so what I'm going to talk you through now is something that we've been working on just in the last couple of months, which is around implementing research and ethical review processes. So we instigated this work for 3 different reasons: to ensure that our research efforts are aligned with our research priorities, to have a clearer process for our ethical considerations, namely to identify which projects could be reviewed internally and which should go to formal ethical review, and to manage how we assess external research requests. So as I touched on before, we receive a lot of requests from external researchers who are wanting to involve our clients and staff in various research projects. We've previously had no formal process for assessing our involvement in these projects. Like, we did assess them, but there was no formal process. So thanks to the hard work of my colleague Vendula, we now have a process which seems to be working really well. And I'll just talk you through this kind of flow that we've got up here. So all research projects that we touch, but not so much operational projects, complete a project description form, which is not too dissimilar from a kind of ethics form, but it's much shorter and more straightforward. And the project description form is then reviewed by 2 members of our research unit or our subcommittee using a specific project review form. And when that's being reviewed, we are assessing the research for, does it align with our research priorities? And if so, which ones? And what are the ethical considerations for the project on a broad level? And I guess kind of going a little bit deeper with the ethical considerations, we would want to know if the project has included or will include a reference group, such as an Aboriginal reference group or a lived experience reference group. Is the project greater than low risk? So that would be kind of, referring to the ethical guidance from the NHMRC. Does it have or require formal ethical approval? And lastly, which ethics committee should be used, if any, if we're thinking that the project does need formal ethical review. And then once we've assessed each project, we make a decision on the next steps. So do we need more information? Clarify CRC's involvement in the research project. If it's an external request, we might suggest amendments or changes to approach, which might be better suited to our clients and staff. We decide if we're going to support the project. And lastly, we decide on what ethical processes we will undertake. Okay, I'm aware we've probably only got 10 more minutes or so, and I'm going to talk you through some practical examples of our research output and engagement at CRC. So broadly, there's kind of 4 key areas of research output and engagement that we conduct here. And they're not mutually exclusive, of course, and typically work together and support each other. So research projects include evaluation projects. So that includes those conducted by CRC internally, and also those that we might commission or oversee, which are contracted to external consultants. So often that is a requirement of funding, that our programs are evaluated by external consultants. So we will manage and oversee those projects, as well as conducting some of our own evaluations. Literature and evidence reviews, which obviously often form part of the research and evaluation projects, but they can also be conducted independently. And then managing research requests from and or collaborating with external researchers. Operational data collection. So that's around support in improving operational processes and information management within the organisation. So that could include analysing data collected in a client management system for internal use and for reporting to funding bodies, or developing our own data collection processes, such as collecting information from staff, such as our advocacy register, which I'll talk to you more about in a moment. Research translation and presentations. So that includes a whole range of activities. So writing articles about our research, development of fact sheets and research briefs, presentations at conferences, workshops, poster presentations, development of training packages, such as our criminal justice training. And lastly, advocacy. So advocacy kind of goes across all of these, but I'll just pull out a few specific examples. So writing submissions to government inquiries, letter writing, and participation in consultations which are relevant to CRC's work. So I'm going to talk you through the example which I mentioned at the very beginning of this webinar, which was partly why or a big reason why we won the award at the NADA conference earlier this year. So this is the CRC evaluation, which was published in 2021. And it was a very impressive evaluation that was a partnership between CRC and the University of New South Wales. So CRC wanted to establish an evidence base for how our programs and community-based supports for people exiting prison can disrupt cycles of disadvantage and criminal justice system involvement. We were lucky enough to receive some funding to do the evaluation from New South Wales Health's Alcohol and Other Drugs Early Intervention Fund. And we partnered with Ruth McCausland and Rebecca Reeve at UNSW. We aimed to answer some key research questions. So how do CRC programs support clients in their transition into the community, which was more the qualitative side of things? What is the efficacy of CRC's programs? What is the estimated economic value of community-based outreach models for populations with complex needs? I'm not going to attempt to talk you through any of the findings because we don't have enough time, they're incredible findings, which are available to read on the CRC website. You can read the whole report, or there's also a video of the launch on the CRC website. But so we aimed to answer those evaluation questions through a mixed methods approach, which was comprised of 5 different studies, which all worked together to kind of triangulate that to answer the question around how effective CRC programs are. And so there was qualitative interviews with staff and clients, analysis of client survey data, quantitative analysis of CRC outcomes using Boxar's reoffending database, quantitative data bank comparison study and costs, and a matched comparative case study and costs. And we had a number of different ethical approvals for the project from the Aboriginal Health and Medical Research Council, UNSW's HREC and Corrective Services Ethics. And the study had oversight from an Aboriginal reference group. The next example of our work around operational data collection, I've got 2 different examples here. So ARPU was involved in the creation of a reporting dashboard for a pilot program. So it was a requirement from the funder to report on a number of outcomes of the program at the end of each month using a specific CMS client management system that the program was required to use. So ARPU spent a lot of time with the data that was being generated in the CMS and helped to develop a reporting dashboard, which is being used by the managers now to report to their funding body. And that obviously required a fair amount of technical skill, which I was able to lean heavily on my colleague Vendula for the development of that. So thank you, Vendula. The advocacy register form is an example of the ARPU creating a data collection method. So this form was developed in consultation with CRC staff, which aims to capture a range of advocacy issues that our frontline staff witness in their daily work with clients. So we found that there's often emails being sent around the organisation around these advocacy issues, but there was no systematic way of actually collecting this information. So we created a form which is available for staff to input information, and it will be used to provide strategic information to guide the issues that we should address in our advocacy work, and also address like specific issues should they come up. So next, I've also got 2 examples of kind of research translation and presentations. So ARPU collaborated with the Miranda project to develop a poster presentation for the Stop DV conference, which is in the middle of this slide here. It's very tiny. It was an AO poster in reality, so it doesn't work to be scaled down on this little screen. So the information contained in the poster was put together by ARPU through some desk research, and also we used some information from the CRC evaluation, which I was just talking about, as well as information from Miranda staff to create the poster. And then it was designed by Miley Angelo, our admin manager. And another example of research translation, but kind of more on the presentation end of things, was ARPU collaborated with CRC staff to create a symposium at the 2023 NADA conference. The symposium involved a series of workshops ahead of the actual symposium. So we were meeting with staff, and my colleague Sophie Russell was wonderful in preparing all of the information that was kind of the backbone of the symposium in terms of compiling research and stats, which helped to support and guide the discussion. And we had a mock symposium here at CRC ahead of the actual thing, which was a really wonderful opportunity to share our work within the organisation and also prepare the staff who are involved ahead of delivering the symposium. So that were the staff that were involved were Ben Tempone, Gail Gray, Claire McMahon and Susan Hawkswood. So thank you so much to them. And the final example of putting our research work into practice is around advocacy. So ARPU recently prepared a submission to the Australian Human Rights Commission detailing considerations for youth justice and child wellbeing reform across Australia. It was a real collaborative effort, which is why I'm highlighting this one. A member of our research subcommittee brought this to our attention at our last meeting. And then ARPU team member Sophie Russell consulted with Pathways Home, which is our youth program, the manager of that program, Lisa Collins, to help write the submission. So that was such a great example of everyone working together. And then another one that I just wanted to bring to your attention is the CRC language guide, which was developed a few years ago. So this language guide is up on our website, and I'd encourage everyone to take a look. It's a very relevant and useful document, which we constantly use in our research and advocacy work. And we will often send this to other researchers when they're coming to us with requests, or media or other service providers, to ensure that people are using language that is positive and non-stigmatizing. So we have very tidily reached the very end of the presentation. So what I kind of, in reflecting on all of the different work that we're doing here in the ARPU unit, I would like to say that collaboration is key. So the work that we're doing would not be possible without all of the different parts within the organisation, from the board to the board research subcommittee, the management team, CRC staff, all the different parts of CRC's operations, and also our clients, and then collaboration with other service providers and organisations and academics to build the work that we're doing. So I'd just like to say thanks to everyone who has supported our work here at CRC. We really appreciate you. And yeah, I think building those connections is just so important to strengthen our work, but then also learn from other people as well. So to just kind of recap what we talked about today. So in the first section, I was talking about ARPU and how we fit into the CRC organisation overall, and kind of what we bring to that. And what kind of came out of that was the importance of having support for research from the board and leadership team. And also the importance of even if it's just having had, Mindy started the unit and she was working on a bunch of other things, but it was really her drive and vision which helped to slowly build the unit. And secondly, we talked about why CRC wanted to do its own research and what the benefits are of that. So there was many reasons listed, and thank you to the staff that contributed to that section of the webinar. But probably the most important reason that we came back to was that an internal research team is best placed to understand the organisational culture and values and address these with nuance and sensitivity and flexibility. Sorry, I've forgotten how to talk. And lastly, we were just looking at what this looks like in practice. So I talked you through the key areas of our work. So research and evaluation, operational data collection, research translation, presentations, and advocacy. So that leads me to the end of my presentation. So thanks again to ComDan, CRC staff and clients, the CRC board and the research subcommittee. And I'd encourage everyone to check out our website, which I've got listed on the screen here, but if you just Google CRC New South Wales, it will come up and you can have a look at our various resources and publications on the website. So yeah, over to you, Katie, and if there's any questions that anyone has, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Lucy. I think your presentation has just highlighted the mammoth efforts that CRC is able to achieve, and with such a small team as well of 3 people, what you guys are able to achieve, and the evident impact of your work through your lovely colleagues' comments through the organisation was a real highlight for me. It was so nice to see that the unit is so well regarded and that they're seeing the impact of your work too. I'm sure it made you glow.
Yeah, it was very nice. I'll have to pay them back with some cookies or something soon.
Absolutely. So I wanted to highlight, you kind of did a little reflective point kind of at the beginning about why CMOs and NGOs should be doing research, and we had some really nice feedback. Jess Atherton said, to be sure we're meeting the needs of the people we serve, which absolutely correct. And Susan said to utilise the information collated by workers within the organisation. Again, it's a great point. And Shifra said they may have less restrictions and can potentially be more led by people their organisation seeks to support, and ask the relevant and right questions. Yeah, so many good points, Shifra. And I think it's just a testament to what can be done in NGOs. But maybe I want to ask some questions, like utilising your expertise and experience in the NGO space, of even kind of from the beginning, how did you collaborate like with the university to do that big evaluation piece, which then led to great awards and things like that?
So that collaboration came about before my time at CRC, but Ruth McCausland is on the CRC board. So I think it was obviously instigated between Mindy and Ruth that could be a real strength. And then Rebecca Reeve has that experience and strength in doing that specific analysis of the Bureau of Crime Statistics reoffending data. So it was obviously a great opportunity to be able to look longitudinally at the outcomes of our clients. And there are obviously other data sources that organisations are able to access to investigate those kinds of, well, not those specific outcomes, but various outcomes. But because a focus of CRC's work is around reducing criminal justice system involvement, it was important to be able to demonstrate the efficacy of that work. But we also thought it was important to have that balanced with the qualitative study, which helped to unpack how our work achieves those positive outcomes for our clients. So instead of just kind of using those recidivism measures, which we know are obviously important, and policymakers and funders like to hear about reduction in recidivism. And of course, that's also an outcome that we want to see too. But we wanted to really understand how that is working for our clients. And so I conducted the qualitative side of things. So that's probably why I've got a bit to say about that. But yeah.
Yeah, and look, I think like reading the report, it kind of brings that humanity to it, hearing it directly from the people impacted by the service, what they've found works for them. Like, I know it was a really interesting read for me, and yeah, I encourage everyone to check it out as well. I thought maybe a good question, and if anyone else has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat for the Q&A function. How have you convinced funding bodies to give you funds, and that research within the organisation is important?
So I think funding for research, well, at the moment we are funded by the Paul Ramsay Foundation specifically for our ARPU unit. And they're also funding one of our service delivery programs, the Miranda Project. And that funding has been essential to building the unit where it is now. Previously, the unit had been funded through various kind of small grants, and when it was just Mindy, she was obviously doing a number of other roles as well. So research was kind of just part of those other roles. And so the PRF funding, I think, was in the works for a reasonably long time, but I think that evaluation report would have been very useful in supporting the need and the importance of having our own research unit. And that research report, the 2020 evaluation, was funded by a grant from New South Wales Health. And that was what helped to get me employed 2 days a week at CRC. So I came on board through that grant to support that particular evaluation. And so I guess in terms of, we're finding increasingly that it is a condition within our funding to conduct evaluations, either using external consultants, or we will advocate to do them internally. And so I guess it's just around having those discussions with funding bodies around the importance of that work being properly funded, and advocating for what that actually costs, because it can be quite expensive, especially commissioning external consultants to do research. But if you can do it internally, that's wonderful, and it has all the wonderful benefits that I was discussing earlier as well, about kind of really understanding the organizational culture.
Absolutely. And so if people are wanting to do it internally and they're wanting to kind of build their research capacity, what tips do you have for that?
Well, I think you would be surprised at the skills that people within organizations have. So to look internally and see what people who might be working in frontline positions, what other skill sets they might have. Do they have an interest in research? Do they have any time to do it? Also, that's the other question. People are very busy with their main work. But so I guess building the capacity within the organisation, obviously employing someone with specific research and evaluation skills is obviously wonderful if you've got the funding to do that. And that person can help to kind of, I guess, put processes and systems in place within the organisation to ensure that they're able to collect information in a way that's going to be useful and ethical, and then perhaps identify other people within the organization who might be able to help with research, and also, of course, like partnerships and collaboration. So we're lucky that a few of our board members are academics, and so we've been able to look to them, especially with the subcommittee, which provides specific guidance on our research and evaluation efforts around how that work can be kind of supported within the organisation, and what are the opportunities for collaborations, and yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so how did that subcommittee come about? I'm just curious.
I think just because of the fact that there was a specific interest within the organisation, and people really saw the importance of having research to underpin our advocacy work, and obviously the board is able to have oversight across a number of areas, but to actually be able to pull together a group of people who had specific research interest was really useful. So the subcommittee's been around for a couple of years now, and it's a revolving group of people, and yeah, it's been really useful to kind of see the different work that everyone on the subcommittee is doing, and people provide us with guidance and advice around opportunities as well, and where we should be or could be focusing our efforts within the unit. So yeah, that's another way to build research capacity, is to actually get some other people involved and get their support and lean on them for some strategic direction around research efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I will shamelessly plug the ComDan Research Ethics Consultation Committee. I think
Yes.
they're an awesome kind of means of helping provide some of that guidance as well for anyone that is looking for the kind of that external guidance, particularly around ethics. And they have some really nice broad scope of experience, which is really useful, I think, for people kind of new to research, but also people that are been in it in a while and are in a new area of research, and or making sure that lived experience is upheld and respected kind of to the utmost. I think we've reached the end, unfortunately. So I want to thank Lucy you so much for your presentation. It was so interesting, and I think I'm CRC's biggest fan.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks for the opportunity to present to you and members today.
No worries. And look, I will put up the recording in a few days on the ComDan website, and a short survey will pop up on your screen after the webinar. I would really, really appreciate if people could fill it out to let us know if you loved it or you didn't love it, if you've got any feedback. But thank you so much, everyone, and hope to see you soon at the next ComDan webinar or workshop. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.